Gonky, once again, there's another 737 in the news, this time United.
Yeah, for the record, I love Boeing. I'm really happy. I don't,
no plans of
yeah,
doing anything.
yeah, no issues or anything. Yeah, we talked about this when we were a couple weeks ago. Mace, like we were talking, there was like a string of 5 incidences with Boeing. This is one of them. They 73 Max landed at in Houston, right? And slid off the end of the runway. So, so this is the preliminary report, and if you read through it, basically they landed. I've been in this scenario before. So like where I fly out of, like the terminal is all the way at the end of the runway, and it's almost a 3-mile runway. So these guys are coming in. Braking actions like 5, 5, and 5, or maybe it's 3, 3, and 3. Anyways, the braking action is not perfect. They're landing. They're like, man, we want to roll the end. So they ask the tower, hey, ask them if we can roll the end. Tower's like, yep, you can roll to the end. And basically, I mean, like I said, we do it all the time because we want to minimize our time on the runway, mainly so we can go home. And these guys landed. And if you read through the report down at the bottom, it's a pretty large runway. And basically the captain, like at the end game, I'm not 7-3 smart mover, but he says he goes some brakes 2 to 1. Is that how it works when you're selecting auto brakes?
I mean, there is, but you wouldn't do that. You just, if you hit the brakes, it'll take it off.
Like right, it kicks them off. Right.
Once you tap the brakes, you go manual braking. It gets rid of it. So
Airbus is the same way, but he changes the brake setting, thinking that, hey, I'm going to taxi this thing all the way to the end. And then I think they do that because it talks about at the end there. If you scroll towards the end of the article, how they landed fine. They touched down about 1,000 feet down the runway, which is good. And basically, the captain he didn't apply manual braking until the last.
Wait, scroll up. It says it right there, Doug. What you just said. The captain changed the auto brake setting from 2 to 1, commanding a reduced acceleration rate and following an IMC approach. Yep. So this is prior. He verbal, like you don't do it on the landing rollout. You were like, oh, I'm going to be, brakes 3, flaps 30. And he's like, no, like brakes 2, flaps 30. Okay. Brakes 1, which, I mean, so that's auto braking.
But normally, don't you guys get the printout, right? You put in everything and the computer prints out the performance and it says, hey, you need brakes 2 in this case, whatever. You just pick 2.
Not for brakes. I mean, you make that judgment call, at least at my airline, as I remember it 4 years ago. You make that judgment call, and when you brief the approach, you're like, okay, we've got X number of runway. We're going to be a flaps 30. Okay, here's the numbers for flaps 30. Flaps 30, brakes 2. 2 is pretty standard, because I think it was 1, 2, 3 max, and usually 2 or 3, unless you really needed to stop, you wouldn't do that. I've never seen anybody go to 1. Usually, if you're going to go to 1, you just hit the brakes and click it off.
So 1 is the least.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he went to the 1 before off, like.
Okay.
Off and like RTO off 1, 2, 3 max.
Well, I mean, they had a relatively normal landing, and then he didn't start applying manual braking until 6,000 feet from the end. And that's when he first noticed, hey, this thing's not slowing down. And so they try to get it stopped. Mover, they touched down. I think it said 158 knots. Is that normal? Generally, I think
it depends on the weight.
I mean,
yeah,
to me, that's a little fast.
No, well, I mean, again, it depends on the weight and the flap setting. How much fuel were they carrying? They could have been ferrying fuel, which usually you wouldn't at a base like that, their actual base. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, well, they touched down. Like I said, the captain gets on the brakes at about 6,000 feet from the end of the runway.
That's what it looks like. So this is your auto brakes off. 1, 2, 3 max RTO. So obviously it's an off when you're flying, and then usually we were in 2 or 3. Like I mean, max is a lot. I mean, it is a lot. And sorry, go ahead.
Do you use like for us, max is only used for actually takeoff, for the rejected takeoff? Is that
I use RTO? RTO is
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So RTO is rejected takeoff. That's what you are in takeoff mode.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, all right. He dials down the brakes, but he lands, and they're like, it's, the official investigation hasn't been out, but like I said, I've been in their shoes many times, and they're just thinking about, hey, we just want to get to the end. And by the time they realize they don't have what they feel is required braking, they're starting to run out of runway. So they do the best they can. The captain tries to take the airplane off the taxiway at better than 30 knots, and it starts skidding and sliding. And that's when it says in the article, all right, the rudder pedals start shaking, and they end up going off into the grass. So the official report hasn't been out yet, but both of these pilots were very experienced. It didn't talk at all about what the was this their first leg on their first day, or was it the end of the day, or any kind of factors that might have driven human factors. But I don't know, Mover, I mean, could you see yourself kind of going down this path?
Well, I mean, and Mace, you can speak to this too. Just in general, anything you fly, right? If it goes from dry, if it appears to be dry, and then you get a wet spot, so to speak, or a puddle or stuff like that, like you can have traction and then not in an instant stuff. And in the F-16, when we'd fly that, you had, well, I don't know, block 50, I guess, is different than the block 30, but the block 30 itty bitty brakes. And I can't tell you how many people, would pop tires, because they would land hot, heavy, kind of stuff, or, you're a long rollout landing fast or something like that. So, I mean, I think you see this a lot in just jet aircraft. Now in this, so they're saying Gonky, there's nothing mechanically wrong.
No. And I didn't mention it, but I mean, they did, at least with the Airbus, you can calculate the landing distance with idle reverse. They did use idle reverse. They didn't use max reverse. So, but yeah.
I mean, dude, pilot error, you misjudge, you thought you had something, you get into it's dry. And then you get into that where it's pooling water. And next thing you know, the anti-skid's working, and the anti-skid's going to keep you from locking up the brakes.
Yeah.
But on the same token, it's not going to slow you down as much as, if it were a dry runway where the anti-skid weren't engaged. So
it's one of the worst feelings, feeling like you're not slowing down fast enough and the end of the runway is approaching, or the jet in front of you is approaching.
Yeah.
With the formation, sucks. This captain started flying the year I was born. He has 15,000 hours.
Yeah, so he's not new, right?
No,
so,
that's good. I was like, dang, Gina.
Yeah.
How old are you?
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, I've been there, and the Super Hornet has fantastic brakes. And there was one time I wasn't sure I was going to be able to stop it. Like you said, Mace, like it does not matter how much harder you stand on the pedals.
Yeah.
All it's going to give you, all it can give you,
Yeah. It's a scary feeling.
Yeah.
The 7.3, I mean, the Max has really good brakes. The 7.3 NGs, I mean, the brakes aren't bad. But again, we don't know, how much fuel are they carrying? Did they have some extra gas because of weather issues? So were 158 sounds like they were heavier than, your normal stuff, which means, I mean, it's physics. It becomes a physics problem. Yeah. So I always say, there by the grace of God go I. People, look, I mean, dude, people make mistakes. Things happen. An aero chain was not broken in this case. Luckily, no harm, no foul, really. I mean, damaged airplane, damaged egos, but everybody got off that airplane and lived to tell about it, and it's a lesson learned. The problem, though, is that you're the wedge in a situation where the wedge is Boeing. So you're really not the wedge, and there's nothing to wedge you out of this, because United and Boeing, just like we were talking about Southwest, I mean, United has gotten to the point where they're not even allowed to do some of their own check rides and stuff. They can't, the FAA's come down on them and kind of made some oversight concerns. So, it's when you're under the microscope, halo or horns, that's why we're talking about this. because they're not the first and they're not going to be the last.
No, I mean, unfortunately, and like you said, we were just thankfully, nobody was hurt.
Yeah. Who was flying? I missed that part. The captain. So there was no change of aircraft control at this point.
It didn't say. No.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Anything to add on that one? It just sucks.
No, it's a bad feeling.
Yeah.
Because you can't go, right? It's like, well, I can't go and I can't stop. Dang it.